You know what they say about being a cop? You never really retire. The badge might be gone. The case is closed. But the instincts, they never leave you. My name is Michael Turner. I am 62 years old. A widower living in Sacramento, California. After 35 years working homicide, I thought I'd earned a little peace. These days, my peace usually comes in the form of weekend hikes through the Sierra Nevada foothills. Just me, my pack, and the quiet of the trails. That Saturday morning in early October, the air was crisp enough to sting my lungs as I opened the garage door. Sunlight cut across the concrete, glinting off tools I hadn't touched in months. The garage smelled faintly of motor oil and cedar from the fishing rods I kept in the corner. I hummed softly while checking my gear water bottle, trail snacks, compass, and an old leather journal Linda gave me before she passed. 3 years gone. And I still carried that journal everywhere. It was a reminder of her handwriting, her presence, her faith in me as both a husband and a father. I was bent over the pack, adjusting the straps, when I heard footsteps on the driveway. Morning. Dad. Ethan stood there in the doorway, framed by the rising sun. My only son. 28 years old. Tall, handsome like his mother, but with shadows under his eyes that had been growing darker these last few months. His voice had an unnatural brightness to it, the kind that came from forcing yourself to sound cheerful when your insides were breaking apart. Morning. Ethan. I replied, keeping my tone light. You're up early. He shrugged, hands jammed deep into his hoodie pockets. Yeah. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd see you off. Something in the way he shifted his weight made every hair on the back of my neck rise. His shoulders were too stiff, his breathing shallow, sweat beading on his forehead even though the morning was cool. I knew that look. I'd seen it in interrogation rooms, on the faces of suspects trying too hard to appear calm while their worlds crumbled beneath them. Getting ready for another one of your hikes? Ethan asked, stepping closer to my backpack. His eyes kept flicking to it, then away, then back again. Yeah, I said slowly. Heading up near Auburn this time. Good trails out there. He nodded, but his gaze betrayed him. It stayed on the pack, like it had a magnetic pull. Mind if I take a look at your setup? He asked, already reaching before I could respond. I straightened, watching him carefully. His movements were practiced, almost rehearsed. He pretended to admire the compass, the pocket knife, the rolled-up sleeping bag, but his right hand moved with precision toward his jacket pocket. That's when I saw it. Something small, wrapped in black tissue paper, slipped from his palm and into the main compartment of my pack. The motion was fast, furtive, the kind of sleight of hand you'd miss if you weren't trained to see it. But I was trained. 35 years of reading body language, catching the subtle flinch before a suspect lied, the darting glance before a confession collapsed. I saw it all in my own son's body. The whole thing took less than 10 seconds. Yet in those 10 seconds, it felt like I was watching a slow-motion crime unfold inside my own garage. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to remain still. I bent down, adjusting the straps as though nothing had happened. My breathing steady, my eyes calm. Ethan stepped back quickly, rubbing his hands on his jeans. Not to clean them, no. The gesture looked more like he was trying to rid himself of evidence. Well, I should let you get back to it, he said, voice overly casual. Have a great hike, Dad. Be safe out there. Thanks, I murmured, watching his every move. He disappeared into the house, footsteps echoing on the stairs, leaving me alone with the pack. The garage seemed to grow colder. I stared at the backpack as if it had turned into something toxic, something dangerous. I knew with absolute certainty that whatever Ethan had just placed inside wasn't meant to help me. It was meant to destroy me. I didn't open it right away. Years of detective work had taught me that rushing into a trap was worse than waiting. But the contradiction gnawed at me. Ethan clearly didn't want me to notice. Yet he must have known I'd eventually find it. Unless he wanted me to find it at the wrong time, when I had no chance to defend myself. That realization was like a knife to the gut. My son, my own flesh and blood, had just planted something in my possession, something dangerous enough to ruin me. The image of his face during dinner the night before flashed in my mind. The tremor in his voice when he asked for money. The way his hands shook when he lifted his water glass. I'd written it off as stress from unemployment. Maybe grief. Maybe loneliness. I wanted to believe my son was struggling. Not scheming. But love blinds you. And standing in that garage, staring at the black tissue-wrapped secret now hiding in my backpack, I felt the kind of cold certainty that had carried me through every crime scene of my career. This wasn't stress. This wasn't loneliness. This was betrayal. And I had no idea how deep it went. The house was quiet after Ethan's footsteps faded upstairs. But my mind was loud with questions. The black tissue paper in my backpack might as well have been a ticking bomb. I forced myself to wait. To breathe. To keep my hands steady as I zipped the bag shut. Years of experience told me not to jump too soon. But years of fatherhood told me that whatever my son had done, it wasn't small. I carried the pack to my workbench. In the same place I had once taught Ethan to tie fishing knots. To fix broken lures. To respect the patience of the craft. Now the wood grain under my hands felt foreign, as if those memories belonged to another family entirely. The clasps clicked open. My fingers trembled as I pulled out the folded black tissue. It crackled softly, fragile as ash. Inside was a clear plastic pouch. 2 thick ounces of crystalline powder, catching the light in jagged reflections. Meth. I didn't need a field kit to know. I had seen enough of it in evidence bags. Enough of it ruin lives on the streets of Denver and Sacramento to recognize it instantly. The sight made my stomach lurch. Not just because of what it was, but because of what it meant. Ethan hadn't slipped this into my backpack by accident. He had planted it there deliberately, knowing what it would look like if anyone else found it. I closed my eyes. A wave of nausea rolling through me. My son, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the one I held when his mother Linda died, had just set me up to take the fall for drug possession. The betrayal felt like a blade between the ribs. I thought back to the night before. Dinner had been strained from the start. I grilled salmon outside, the scent mingling with autumn leaves, while Ethan set the table inside. The air carried that October crispness Linda used to love. For a moment, I almost felt her with us. But when I walked back inside, I found Ethan sitting stiffly, eyes hollow, barely touching his food. "Dad," he said finally, voice rough, "I need to talk to you." I set down my fork, already bracing for another plea. His tone was too familiar. It was the same voice he had used at 16 when he needed money for a school trip. But Ethan wasn't 16 anymore. He was 28. "What's going on, son?" I asked carefully. "I am in trouble," he whispered. His fingers drummed nervously on the table. "Financial trouble. I need $60,000. The number hit me like a slap. 60? My voice cracked, despite my effort to stay calm. "Ethan, that's more than I even have in savings." "What kind of trouble are we talking about?" His jaw tightened. His eyes flashed with something: anger, desperation, maybe both. "Does it matter?" "I am your son. I need your help." "Of course it matters," I said firmly. "I've been helping you for months. Rent. Your car. Groceries. Where is all that money going?" He shoved back from the table so hard the chair screeched. "You don't understand. These people aren't patient. They don't wait." "What people?" I demanded, but he was already storming toward the stairs. "Forget it. I'll figure something else out." The slam of his bedroom door shook the walls. I sat alone at the table, staring at the half-eaten salmon, realizing for the first time that maybe my son's problems weren't just about unemployment. Now, holding the pouch of meth in my garage, the truth was undeniable. He hadn't been asking for help. He had been testing me, seeing if I'd give him the $60,000 willingly. When I didn't, he went to Plan B. Plan B was me. My body sagged against the workbench, grief twisting my chest tighter than any crime scene ever had. I had seen strangers kill strangers over drugs, money, desperation, but never had I imagined my own son would weaponize those same things against me. I looked at the meth again. If the DEA or local cops had found this in my backpack, it'd be finished. At 62, a drug trafficking charge would mean prison until I died. My pension gone. My reputation destroyed. Everything Linda and I had worked for all gone. And Ethan would inherit what remained. The cruel logic of it chilled me to the bone. I thought of Linda's last words to me. She was frail then, skin like paper, voice barely above a whisper. Be patient with him, Michael. He's lost without me. And I had been patient. Patient for 3 years while Ethan spiraled deeper into something I hadn't wanted to admit. Patient, as he drained my savings with endless emergencies. Patient, as he slipped further from the boy she raised into a man I no longer recognized. But patience had become blindness. And blindness had led me here to a garage, where my son's betrayal sat in my hand, like molten lead. I rewrapped the pouch in its black tissue. My hands steadier now than they had been a moment ago. Fear was giving way to something sharper. Determination. If Ethan thought he could destroy me, he had underestimated the man who raised him. Because 35 years on the job had taught me one thing above all else. The moment you let your guard down, the moment you believe love makes you safe, that's when betrayal cuts deepest. And my son had just cut me. I set the pack aside, mind racing. Whatever Ethan's game was, I needed to know how far he was willing to go, who he was talking to, what kind of trouble he had dragged us both into. The meth wasn't just evidence of betrayal, it was evidence of war. A war my own son had declared against me. And I wasn't about to lose. I placed the meth back on the workbench and sat in the silence. The garage suddenly feeling like a crime scene. My crime scene. Except the suspect wasn't some stranger, whose face I'd only seen in mugshots. It was my own son. I needed answers before fear turned into paralysis. So I slipped into the hallway, my steps careful, my body pressed against the wall as I moved toward Ethan's room upstairs. Years of surveillance work had trained me well. I knew exactly how to breathe without giving myself away. Through the thin wooden door, I heard him pacing, the floorboards creaking under each restless step. Then his voice cut through. Rico. I told you. I just need until Sunday. He hissed. His tone was pleading, desperate. My dad's being difficult about the money. But I'll handle it. You'll get the 60 grand. I swear. My stomach twisted. Rico. I knew that name. Rico Morales. I'd worked cases that brushed his edges back in my detective days, low-level enforcer, then moving up into narcotics. Dangerous. Volatile. Always circling gangs in southern Sacramento. Ethan's voice dropped lower. Urgent. Please. Rico. Don't send anyone here. If something happens to me, you'll never get your money. He paused, listening. I could hear Rico's muffled growl on the other end, the kind of tone that made men like Ethan sweat. Then Ethan's footsteps stopped. He spoke again, quieter now, the kind of bargaining voice I'd heard too many suspects use in interrogation rooms. I have a plan. By tomorrow night, everything will be fine. He won't be a problem anymore. My blood went cold. He wasn't just talking about me standing in his way. He was talking about eliminating me. The call ended. But before I could retreat, Ethan dialed another number. His voice shifted. Rehearsed, confidence layered over the panic. Angela. It's me. Yeah. I know the payment's late. I told you. You'll get your money. Just don't start foreclosure proceedings yet. Tomorrow. I'll have everything. Foreclosure. The word detonated like a bomb in my mind. My hand tightened into a fist against the wall. Foreclosure on what? When the second call ended, I forced myself back downstairs, my mind racing. If Ethan was using my name, my property, my signature, I needed to know how deep this went. I waited until the house fell silent again, then slipped into his room. The air reeked of stale energy drinks, sweat, and something chemical. Piles of clothes and pizza boxes cluttered the floor, but underneath the mess, I found what I was looking for. A drawer in his desk wouldn't close all the way. Inside, scattered like confetti, were the pieces of his double life. Bank statements with massive cash withdrawals, credit card slips from casinos in Lake Tahoe, receipts from Prairie Dunes, betting parlor losses, climbing into the tens of thousands. And then the paper that made my hands shake. A loan agreement. $80,000 from Angela Ruiz, licensed private lender. And below, a signature that looked eerily familiar. My name. My forged signature. My house listed as collateral. For a moment, the room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk to keep myself steady. He had signed away the home Linda and I built together. The home filled with her photographs, her scent in the wood, her voice in every room. And he had done it without hesitation. I kept searching, my detective instincts stronger now than my fatherly denial. In his nightstand, I found crumpled betting slips, frantic scribbles on scraps of paper with phone numbers. One was labeled Rico, emergency only. Emergency only. To my son, that meant calling a criminal to cover debts with more lies. I photographed everything with my phone, careful to return each paper exactly where I found it. If this went to court, it'd need evidence. But even as I documented the betrayal, a heavier thought settled over me. Ethan's plan wasn't just about money. It was about removing me completely. The meth in my backpack wasn't just leverage. It was a weapon to erase the last obstacle standing between him and control of everything I owned. I sank onto his bed, the mattress sagging under me. For 30 years, it hunted killers, interrogated liars, and dragged criminals into the light. But I had never once considered that the most dangerous deception it'd face would come from my own child. I remembered Linda's voice again. Her eyes, glassy with pain, clutching my hand in those final hours. Promise me you'll protect him, Michael. Promise me you'll be patient. I had kept that promise until it rotted into a curse. Because patience had given Ethan enough rope to build his gallows and mine. The black pouch in my garage wasn't just evidence. It was a death sentence, waiting to be carried out by the DIA, courtesy of a tip from my own son. I stood, anger burning away the grief. If Ethan thought I was an easy mark, he had forgotten who raised him. He thought he was playing chess with an amateur, but I had been playing this game longer than had been alive. I went back to the garage, unwrapped the meth once more, and stared at it. 2 ounces of poison, enough to destroy a man's reputation forever. Ethan wanted me to carry this into the wilderness of the Sierra Nevada, to be found with it by authorities tipped off at just the right time. His freedom, his debts, his survival paid for by my ruin. But what if the trap were turned? I thought of his car, parked in the driveway. A 10-year-old sedan, the same one I had helped him buy after college. He thought he was moving me like a pawn, but pawns had a way of reaching the end of the board. And when they did, they became something far more powerful. I wrapped the pouch again, slid it into my jacket pocket, and allowed myself the smallest of grim smiles. Ethan had no idea his game had just changed. I stood in the garage, the black pouch heavy in my jacket pocket. It felt alive, pulsing with danger, like it was waiting for its chance to burn me. My son had thought he was clever, that he could slip poison into my life without me noticing. But 35 years in homicide had taught me the first rule of survival. Never play the game on someone else's board. Change the board. Through the garage window, I could see Ethan's old silver sedan sitting in the driveway, dust coating the hood. A faint dent on the bumper from the accident he never admitted was his fault. It was a symbol of him beat up, neglected, but still running just enough to pass for reliable. I slipped the pouch from my pocket, weighing it in my hand. 2 ounces of crystal meth. Enough to bury me. Or enough to bury him. Linda's face flashed in my mind. Her voice, warm even in her weakest days, whispering, "Promise me you'll be patient with him." I had been patient. Patient while he drained my savings. Patient while he lied through his teeth. Patient while he forged my name and gambled away his future. But patience wasn't saving him anymore. It was killing me. And Linda hadn't seen this side of him. She hadn't seen the man our son had become. Desperate. Reckless. Willing to sacrifice his own father. If she had, maybe her last words would have been different. I wiped down my backpack carefully, scrubbing the fabric until I was certain no fingerprints of Ethan's remained. The pack looked normal again, just as it always had. Innocent. Then I turned my attention to the pouch. I opened the back door quietly, retrieving Ethan's car keys from the hook where he always left them. My hands were steady now, cold determination replacing grief. I walked to the sedan and pressed the unlock button. The car chirped softly in the still air. The trunk opened with a creak. Inside were the mundane remnants of his life. Jumper cables, A flat soccer ball. An old gym bag smelling faintly of sweat. I pushed the bag aside and slipped the pouch beneath it, tucking it into the wheel well where it wouldn't be seen at first glance, but would be obvious during a search. I stepped back, exhaling slowly. It was done. The trap he had set for me now sat waiting for him. I closed the trunk carefully, returned the keys to the hook, and wiped down the latch of the trunk just in case. Years of evidence handling procedure ran through me automatically, muscle memory from decades on the job. When I walked back into the garage, the emptiness of my pack brought me a strange sense of relief. My gear sat neatly organized: compass, knife, water bottle, journal, all the things I needed for peace. No poison, no betrayal. I sat on the workbench stool, staring at the space where the pouch had been. For 3 years, since Linda's death, I had told myself my role was to protect Ethan, to shield him from the harshness of the world. But sitting there, I finally admitted the truth. Ethan had become the harshness. The threat wasn't outside these walls, it was living under my roof. And now, the choice was no longer between protecting him or letting him fail. The choice was survival. Mine. I was still sitting there when the front door opened. "Dad?" Ethan's voice floated into the garage. Light and casual. Too casual. Cars making weird noises again. "I think ill. Just take an Uber to the interview." I forced a smile. Smart idea. Better safe than sorry. Exactly. His tone carried the easy confidence of someone convinced they were winning. "See you later." I listened to his footsteps retreat. The distant rumble of an Uber pulling into the driveway. The slam of the car door as Ethan left. Silence returned. I allowed myself a long, steady breath. The trap was sprung, but not the way Ethan imagined. He thought had orchestrated the perfect play, me arrested, disgraced, stripped of everything, leaving him free to inherit whatever scraps were left. But now, when the authorities came, they wouldn't find anything in my pack. They'd find it where it belonged, in the possession of the man who had put it there in the first place. My phone buzzed on the workbench. A text from Ethan. "Interview went great. Thanks for believing in me, Dad." The lie might have cut me yesterday. Today, it only confirmed the truth. I looked at the phone for a long time before setting it down. This wasn't my son anymore. Not the boy Linda and I had raised. Not the child I used to carry on my shoulders through Yosemite trails. This was a stranger who had taken his face, his voice, and twisted them into weapons. The meth sat waiting in his car, silent and deadly. The game pieces were moving, and Ethan thought he was the player. But the board had shifted, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't the hunted. I was the hunter again. Evening fell over the house like a heavy curtain. I sat in my recliner, the television murmuring news I wasn't listening to. Every nerve tuned to the sounds upstairs. My pack was back in its usual spot by the garage door, harmless again. But my heart beat with the kind of anticipation I hadn't felt since working undercover cases. Above me, floorboards creaked. A muffled door closed. Then Ethan's voice drifted down, low and urgent. "Yes. I need to report drug trafficking," he said. Voice steady, rehearsed. "My name is Ethan Turner. My father, Michael Turner, he's storing meth in his backpack. I saw it myself this morning." I closed my eyes. There it was. The knife, sliding between my ribs. "He keeps it in the garage, in his hiking pack," Ethan continued. "2 bags. Maybe more. He seemed nervous when I walked in on him earlier. I think he's planning to move it tonight." The gall of it nearly made me laugh. He was painting me as the criminal with details so precise. It would have been convincing to anyone who hadn't seen him plant the drugs himself. "Yes. Please send someone soon," Ethan pressed. "I am afraid he'll hide it. Or worse, disappear." My chest burned. Not from fear, but from fury. My own son had just dialed the dia, building my coffin with his words. But the coffin was empty. And he didn't know it. The call ended. Silence followed. Then I heard him dial again, his tone shifting like a mask sliding into place. "Rico. It's me. Yeah. It's done. The cops are on their way. By tomorrow you'll have your money." So that was the play. He thought my arrest would unlock everything: my accounts, my house, my reputation. All of it funneled into his escape hatch. Another call. His voice took on a different edge, almost smug. "Angela, relax. It's under control. My dad won't be a problem much longer. Once they take him in, he'll have access to the house. The funds your loan will be covered in full. No more foreclosure threats. I promise." The arrogance of it made bile rise in my throat. He wasn't just trying to survive. He was orchestrating, manipulating two predators, Rico and Angela, into believing he had everything handled. And for the first time, I realized Ethan wasn't stumbling blindly anymore. He thought he had mastered the game. I sat perfectly still, every muscle taut, while upstairs my son plotted my destruction. An hour passed before he finally came downstairs. His face wore the perfect mask of innocence: relaxed shoulders, casual smile. "Hey, Dad. Think he'll turn in early. Big day tomorrow." I met his eyes, searching for the boy I used to know. All I saw was calculation. "Good idea, son," I said softly. "Rest up." He smiled, the smile of a man who believed victory was already his, then vanished into his room. I muted the television, the house sinking into silence broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. The clock ticked steadily toward midnight. I imagined the DIA agents sitting in their briefing room, receiving Ethan's tip. I pictured their warrant being signed, their vehicles gassed up, their radios crackling with my name. Ethan thought the dawn would bring my downfall, but dawn would bring his. I returned to the garage, checked my pack once more, and stared at the empty space where the pouch had once sat. Clean. Innocent. Exactly as a retired detective's gear should look. Meanwhile, the meth sat under his gym bag in the trunk of his car, patient as a snake coiled in the dark. I thought of Linda again. If she had been here, she might have begged me to confront Ethan, to save him, to pull him back from the brink. But Linda wasn't here. And the son we had raised together was gone, replaced by someone who saw me, not as his father, but as a pawn. No, not a pawn. A sacrifice. The kind of sacrifice men like Rico and Angela demanded when debts came due. But sacrifices can turn, and predators can become prey. When I went back inside, I felt the strangest sense of calm, like the storm had already broken, and all that was left was to let the pieces fall. Tomorrow morning, when the knock came on the door, I would open it with steady hands and clear eyes. Ethan would watch as his perfect plan unraveled, as the evidence he planted pointed only to himself. And then, maybe for the first time in his adult life, he would understand what it felt like to play against someone who knew every move before it was made. I turned off the television, letting the house sink into darkness. Ethan thought he was the mastermind, but he had forgotten who taught him to play the game in the first place. The morning sun spilled across the living room, carpet in long golden stripes. I sat in my recliner, coffee cooling in my hands, waiting for the inevitable. Every nerve in my body was alert, but on the outside, I looked calm. Years of interrogations had taught me how to wear stillness like armor. At 9:17 a.m., the first set of tires crunched onto my driveway. Through the blinds I saw the glint of police lights, the white lettering of DIA across navy jackets, and the familiar face of Detective Janet Collins stepping out of an unmarked sedan. She had been my partner for nearly a decade before I retired. Behind her came two more vehicles, officers moving with precision, weapons holstered but ready. "Dad?" Ethan's voice floated down the stairs. "There are police cars outside. What's going on?" His acting was flawless, tone perfectly balanced between worry and disbelief. If I hadn't overheard his late-night calls, even I might have believed him. The doorbell rang, sharp and authoritative. "I'll get it," I said, rising slowly, coffee mug steady in my hand. Ethan hovered at the bottom of the stairs, eyes wide in his best impression of innocence. But when he caught his reflection in the hallway mirror, I saw it, the flicker of a smile, gone as fast as it came. I opened the door. Janet stood there, with two DIA agents flanking her. "Michael," she said formally, her voice edged with regret. "We need to talk. We have a warrant to search your property." I nodded. "Of course. Come in." Ethan stepped forward, his face painted with shock. Detective Collins? What's this about? My father, he would never. Her eyes flicked to him, reading his performance with the practiced gaze of a 20-year veteran. We received a report of narcotics at this address, she explained evenly. Specifically, methamphetamine stored in a hiking backpack. Oh God, Ethan gasped, almost too perfectly. That's in the garage. I can show you. Go ahead, Janet said. We walked to the garage, the agents moving methodically, cameras clicking as they documented every step. Ethan strode confidently ahead, like a man guiding rescuers to the truth. There it is, he said, pointing at my pack. He was working with it yesterday, really nervous. The lead agent approached the pack cautiously, gloves snapping into place. He photographed the outside, the zippers, the compartments. Then he opened it. My heart thudded, but my face remained unreadable. One by one, the agent pulled items from the pack. Water bottle, compass, knife, journal. He examined each carefully, laid them out, searched every fold of fabric. Finally, he looked up, confusion knitting his brow. Nothing here. Ethan blinked. That's impossible. Check again. The agent did. Thoroughly. Every compartment. Every seam. Empty. I tilted my head slightly. Something wrong. Son? You seem awfully certain about what's in my bag. Ethan's composure faltered. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I know what I saw. He had a package wrapped in black paper. It was right there. Janet's eyes narrowed. Interesting. How exactly did you know it was narcotics wrapped in black paper? Ethan stammered. I just thought it looked suspicious. The lead agent zipped the pack shut. No controlled substances here. Should we expand the search? Wait, Janet said sharply. She studied Ethan, the way I had watched countless suspects unravel. You were the one who called this in, weren't you? His face flushed red. I was just being a concerned citizen. If I was wrong, I am sorry. But let's search your vehicle. Janet cut in, her voice suddenly cold. My car? Ethan's voice cracked. Why would you search my car? I am the one who reported this. But the agents were already moving. They strode to the silver sedan, popped the trunk, and began their systematic inspection. Gym bag, jumper cables, spare tire. Then the pause. The lead agent lifted the gym bag aside. His gloved hand emerged, holding the black tissue-wrapped pouch. He peeled it back, revealing the crystalline shards inside. The silence was deafening. 2 ounces of meth, the agent announced grimly. Clear possession with intent. Ethan went pale, sweat beading on his forehead. No. That's not mine. He planted it there. He pointed at me with shaking hands. My father put it there. He's trying to frame me. Janet's gaze didn't waver. Really? Then why did you direct us straight to his backpack instead of your trunk? Why were you so confident about what we would find? Ethan sputtered, words collapsing into fragments. I don't know. I was just... Ethan Turner, the agent said flatly, snapping handcuffs onto his wrists. You are under arrest for possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute, and for filing a false federal report. The clink of metal on bone echoed through the garage. Ethan's eyes locked onto mine, burning with hatred. You did this. He spat. You moved it. You set me up. I met his gaze steadily, voice calm as stone. Son, I have no idea what you're talking about. The agents led him toward the squad car. His mask of confidence was gone now, replaced by the wide-eyed panic of a man watching his entire scheme collapse. Janet lingered, her expression complicated. Michael, I don't know what's happened between you and your son, but you should know he nearly had us convinced. Nearly. I exhaled slowly, the tension finally easing from my shoulders. Nearly isn't enough in this game. Janet, you and I both know that... She gave me a long look, then followed her team outside. The garage door closed behind them, and silence returned once more. But it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a storm that had broken, leaving wreckage in its wake. My son had just been led away in handcuffs. And though the law was finally on my side, my heart felt heavier than it ever had on any case. Because this wasn't a criminal I had outsmarted. It was Ethan, my son. 3 weeks later, I sat in the back row of the Sacramento County Courthouse. The air thick with disinfectant and stale coffee. The walls were paneled in oak. The judge's bench looming under the California state seal. I had sat in hundreds of courtrooms over my career, but this was the first time I sat not as a detective, not as a witness, but as a father watching his son stand trial. Ethan shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his wrists shackled. The swagger head carried for months was gone. His hair was unwashed, his face pale, eyes hollow. For a moment, I almost saw the boy. He had been the one Linda once kissed on the forehead before school. The one who used to leave me hand-drawn cards saying, "Best dad." But that illusion shattered when he looked at me. Hatred burned in his eyes like wildfire. "All rise." The bailiff called. Judge Eleanor Price entered, stern and composed. She had a reputation for cutting through theatrics, for her blunt rulings. I respected her. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed man named Charles Avery, rose first. "Your Honor, the state charges Ethan Turner with possession of methamphetamine with intent to distribute, filing a false federal report, forgery, and fraud." Ethan's court-appointed attorney, a weary woman juggling too many cases, countered softly, "My client is a young man struggling with addiction and the trauma of losing his mother. He made mistakes, yes, but he deserves treatment, not condemnation." Avery wasted no time. He laid out the case with clinical precision. 2 ounces of meth found in the defendant's trunk. A false tip phoned in under his name, accusing his father of trafficking. Forged documents using his father's signature to secure an $80,000 loan with the family home as collateral. Gambling receipts totaling tens of thousands of dollars. And recorded phone calls with known criminals, Rico Morales and Angela Ruiz. He clicked a remote, and Ethan's voice filled the courtroom from a recording. "Everything will be fine. He won't be a problem anymore." The words echoed like a curse. The jury shifted uneasily. Judge Price's brow furrowed. The defense tried to soften it. "Your Honor?" Those words were spoken under duress. "Mr. Warner." Turner was desperate, pressured by violent loan sharks. He never intended harm. He was simply trying to buy time. But Avery struck back with a twist I hadn't expected. He produced a thin, leather-bound ledger, its pages filled with numbers and names. "This," Avery explained, "was recovered during the arrest of Rico Morales in Los Angeles just last week. Inside are records of debts owed to Morales by multiple individuals, including the defendant, Ethan Turner." Here he pointed to an entry, the handwriting jagged but clear, $60,000. Beside it, a note. "Collateral, Dad." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. "Collateral, Dad." I gripped the bench in front of me until my knuckles whitened. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Reading Falf." "Turner. Is this your ledger entry?" Ethan's voice cracked. "No, that's not mine. He made that up." But the prosecutor was relentless. "Your Honor, the entry matches not only the debt amount the defendant confessed to his father, but also the exact figure he demanded at dinner. Combined with the forged loan documents, the state submits that Ethan Turner deliberately planned to sacrifice his father's freedom to satisfy his creditors." The defense slumped, out of ammunition. Judge Price's eyes cut through Ethan like glass. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" For the first time, Ethan faltered. He stood slowly, chains clinking. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I want to apologize to my father." He swallowed hard, eyes darting toward me, though they couldn't hold mine. "I was desperate. I made terrible choices. I never meant for things to go this far." The apology felt rehearsed, empty. Words aimed at mercy, not at me. Judge Price's tone was like cold iron. "Ethan Turner, this court finds you guilty on all charges. You are sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Perhaps in that time, you will reflect on the lives you endangered most of all, your own father's." The gavel cracked like a gunshot. Ethan's knees buckled. Guards steadied him as the shackles clanged. He twisted, eyes locking on me one last time. You think you won. Dad, you didn't. You just destroyed me. I met his stare with the calm that had carried me through every case of my career. No. Son, you destroyed yourself. The bailiff led him away, his footsteps echoing down the corridor until they vanished into silence. I sat back, the courtroom spinning around me. Relief didn't come. Neither did triumph. Only emptiness. Because justice had been served, but family had been lost. 2 months after the sentencing, I stood in the middle of my living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting narrow bars across the floor. The house felt foreign now, hollow in a way that went beyond the absence of furniture. It was as if the memories themselves had been tainted, every wall carrying the echo of Ethan's betrayal. A realtor had warned me it might be hard to let go. That selling the home Linda and I built would be like cutting out a part of my heart. But the truth was, my heart had already been cut out in that garage, the morning I found the meth. Holding on to this place wasn't holding on to Linda. It was holding on to grief. The market was hot, and the house sold in less than 2 weeks. After paying off the mortgage and the legal fees, I had enough left to buy a modest apartment outright in Santa Barbara. Smaller, quieter, closer to the ocean Linda had always loved. On the morning I left, I walked through the empty rooms one last time. The kitchen where Ethan used to steal cookies before dinner. The hallway where Linda would hang his drawings. The garage where the trap had been set. I touched the doorframe, whispered a goodbye, and closed the chapter. Santa Barbara greeted me with salt air and golden light. My apartment overlooked the water, the balcony catching every sunrise. From there, I could watch the waves roll in, steady and honest, never pretending to be anything other than what they were. The simplicity was a balm. Detective Janet Collins visited one afternoon, a bottle of red wine in hand. She set it on my counter, her eyes softening as she looked around. You did the right thing, Michael. Most fathers would have gone down with their sons out of blind loyalty. I poured us each a glass, staring at the crimson swirl. Blind loyalty isn't love, Janet. It's self-destruction. She nodded. For what it's worth, Angela Ruiz fled the state. We've issued a warrant, but she's vanished. As for Rico, he won't be bothering anyone again. Caught with half a kilo in Los Angeles. He's looking at decades. I exhaled, the news lifting a weight I didn't realize I was still carrying. And Ethan? Prison's not kind, she said carefully. But maybe it will be enough time for him to confront what he's done. 2 letters had arrived from Ethan already. Both sat unopened on my kitchen counter. I had read the addresses, the neat block handwriting, but I couldn't bring myself to open them. I didn't know if they contained apologies, pleas, or more manipulation. And I wasn't ready to find out. Because here's the truth. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about opening the door again. Sometimes it's about closing it, locking it, and choosing peace on the other side. One evening, as the sun melted into the Pacific, I sat on the balcony with Linda's old journal in my lap. Her handwriting curved across the yellowed pages. Words of encouragement she had once written for me during long nights on the job. Be patient. Trust your instincts. Protect what matters most. For years, I thought protecting what matters most meant protecting Ethan at all costs. But now I understood. It meant protecting myself too. It meant recognizing that love without boundaries isn't love, it's enablement. And enablement destroys both the giver and the receiver. I closed the journal and looked out at the horizon. The sky streaked with pink and gold. The world kept moving forward, with or without the weight I carried. And here's what I learned in the hardest way possible. Sometimes the people closest to us become the greatest threats. Sometimes protecting yourself means walking away, even from the ones you love most. And sometimes the bravest act of love is refusing to let yourself be destroyed. I didn't stop loving Ethan, but I stopped sacrificing myself on the altar of his bad choices. Linda would have wanted peace. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could give her that by choosing it for myself. The tackle box now sat in the corner of my Santa Barbara apartment, cleaned and polished, lures neatly arranged. On weekends, I hiked the trails near the coast or cast a line from the pier. the water cool and steady beneath me. Out there, the fish never lied. Out there, nothing tried to trick me. And maybe that was enough. So if you're listening to this story, wondering what I'd tell you after everything, I'd say this: love deeply. Yes. But protect yourself too. Draw the line when loyalty turns to destruction. Because survival isn't betrayal. Survival is honoring the life you've been given. And sometimes, the hardest part of being a parent isn't teaching your child right from wrong. It's recognizing when they've chosen wrong and choosing yourself instead. Life has a way of testing us through the people we love most. For years, I thought being a good father meant protecting Ethan no matter the cost. But I learned that love without boundaries is not love, it's surrender. Protecting someone who is willing to destroy you isn't compassion, it's complicity. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step back and let consequences teach the lesson you could not. Survival isn't selfish. It's an act of honoring the life you've been given, the promises you've made to yourself, and even the memory of those who loved you the right way. I will always carry love for my son, but I no longer carry the weight of his choices. And maybe that's the true lesson. That peace doesn't come from saving others. It comes from refusing to let their darkness consume your light.